I was absolutely thrilled when I heard that the theme for the conference was visual at our core and visionary to our core. And it was like, like Janelle's goosebumps. I had this feeling of like, ooh, I like that. Because, visuals are our tool. It's the things we use. It's the sort of methodology we use is using all sorts of visual tools to get people doing better work. But really, our ability to be visionary and help people think past their immediate objectives and help them get to their immediate objectives faster is really sort of the magic of this work. And so as I talk, what I'm going to do is talk us through this model, and we're going to talk about what we do as visual practitioners. In this case, when I stepped into this work 17 years ago, the term was called graphic facilitation. I'll be saying graphic facilitator. And I know that folks, we have a broader umbrella in this room, but I'm going to be primarily talking about sort of what people do at a wall in front of a group of people. But please apply the same ideas more broadly to the kind of work you do. We're going to talk about our clients and how we can do, what we can do to be more forward-facing to our clients and get our word out there. I'm going to talk about what happens in the room and how that then spreads into the organization. And I won't talk about this so explicitly, but we always want to keep in mind how the work we do impacts the big, wide world. Because as we know, visual tools are amazingly powerful for anyone. The first thing I want to talk about is what I see as the three powers in the room. And if you've read my book, this is going to be familiar. If you have some experience, this is going to be familiar. But it's actually these powers are so universal and so human that this is why folks get excited about our work. Like Diane said last night, there's a novelty factor, because people aren't accustomed to seeing somebody add a giant sheet of paper in their room. But what happens, these powers are so human that it makes perfect sense, and it helps people feel like they're connected to each other in the room. And as I talk about in the book, it's the amazing thing about the powers are sort of like three lenses. And they work like a microscope where they help you focus down into the work and see things you couldn't normally see. It's sort of that ability to read the room and understand what the dynamics are that are happening in the room. And it also works like a telescope, lenses that help you see a much broader picture, and the ability to connect everyone's ideas together. So the first power is the power of being listened to. And this is such a basic, simple human thing, which is the idea that this person says their idea, you as the graphic facilitator get their idea on the piece of paper, they see that their idea has been captured, and it helps them feel listened to, validated, and understood. It's that simple. So when people come up to us, it's like they don't have the vocabulary to talk about what we do because it is so new, but a huge reason they love us is because we listen to them and make them feel validated. It's such a basic human thing. The second power is the power of shared understanding. And this is the very simple idea that each person has their own thing that they're coming into the room with. But your job is to put all those things together and show how they work together on the map. And so this is kind of the magic that happens when different people's ideas come together. And what's great about this is that while we're working, we're helping to develop the shared pattern language that's happening in the room, so that each person who comes into the room has their own agenda. And like, I'm gonna use Lynn because Lynn's my friend and I can do this. So Lynn might come into the meeting Monday morning and she's like, I know exactly what we need to do. We need to do X. And she's determined to make sure that they know that X is what we're gonna do. And so as soon as she comes into the room and she says X and she's listened to and it's put on the wall, she then understands that when somebody brings up Y or Z, she can see her idea in relationship to all the other ideas. And happily, with the idea of being listened to, it frees you up to then listen to other people. Because all of us go into meetings with our own agendas and our own politics and our own frustrations and our own excitements, and the thing we did right before we entered the meeting, the thing we did, the next 300 things we have to do once we leave the meeting. But the idea is that we're in this wonderful shared space for that moment, and that the map helps everyone see how their ideas fit together. Does that make sense? We've seen this? Yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Did I hear an amen? The final power is the power of seeing and touching your work. And this is the idea that conversations, how many folks in this room consider themselves an auditory learner? They learn best by hearing things out loud. A couple of tentative hands. It's not surprising for this kind of work. But the idea is we sit around rooms and talk to each other. Often we just talk at each other, but we talk to each other, and that works. That's a fantastic method for people who are auditory learners. But very few of us are, well, obviously in this room, very few of us are auditory learners. But even for the auditory learners, the ability to step back and see and touch your work, it takes that conversation from being ephemeral and makes it tangible. And how many folks have had a client where once they made the work tangible, it kind of freaked them out? Have you ever had that where you get it up? Yeah. And my experience has always been with skulls and crossbones. Like a group will talk about risks, and I'll write down the risks and I'll put a skull and crossbone, and that's the moment they're like, could you not do that? I don't know about that thing right there. But that is a beauty of our work and the transparency of it. And you know, I know, especially if you're new to this work, it's really scary. There's a lot of things happening at once. But one thing I love about the work is it's perfectly transparent. Once people know why the heck you're supposed to be there, you know, that you're supposed to be on a sheet of paper drawing, your work is completely transparent. They see exactly what you're doing. And I think, you know, we get very freaked out about, you know, oh, I misspelled something, or that thing looks a little wonky, or I'm not sure they think that, they know that that drawing is a dog or a cow or a rabbit or whatever. Really, because you're making that conversation tangible, because it's happening large scale and live in front of people, all of those folks in the room are your allies because they saw that conversation take shape. And so the one side of seeing and touching your work is, you know, just the simple tangibility of the work being created, that they can physically see it and it's stuck on a piece of paper. The other side of seeing and touching your work is the awesome thing when we actually give people tools to get up, move around, use Post-its, use flip charts. So, you know, one part of this is the seeing the work. And the other part is, you know, actually giving people the tools to get up and add to our charts and engage with our charts and take actual control of the work that they're doing. So we know that this is the magic that happens. And the tricky thing is, how the heck do you get, I'm just making sure I'm not, oh no, I did skip something. I'm so glad I looked. So folks who've known me for more than 10 minutes know that I have, that when I do come from a drawing background. I was the kid who drew my entire lifetime. But I actually really de-emphasize the product, the actual objects that we're creating. Because as far as I see it, 20% of the work we do is the product, it's the object, and the 80% of it is the process. And so this is something I emphasize over and over again, that the work we do is process over product. That really, the product, you know, and it's easy to get really hung up on sort of like, you know, I made this thing and you know, get caught up in the dog looking exactly like the dog. But generally speaking, when I see folks doing the work and they focus on product, unfortunately, they're making their work about them. This work is about the graphic facilitator. And when you focus on the process, it's about the clients. This is where the magic happens. All this stuff that happens in between people, in the room, and how they interact with your chart. So, you know, that's sort of my, you know, this is a giant pie piece. It's really focusing on, not focusing on what happens as the product, it's really focusing on what happens in between the people as the process. So, so then now the question is, how the heck do you get in the room in the first place? And normally normally what brings us into the room is something called marketing. I like the laughter. I just say the word marketing. It's like, great. And there are a few of us in the room who, this is easy peasy because, we love to talk about the work. But the major thing is that what we're doing isn't so much marketing as education. Because if you already know that you want if you already know what you want, it's easier to market it. The issue is that most of our clients haven't even heard about this in the first place. So the way I see it is that I am introducing people to something new for the first time. And so this is kind of the picture I use, is that we say we do this magical thing. We try to package it into a nice little package and say, I do this thing. And it's got this label. It's called graphic facilitation. You haven't heard of it? What? We have this label that obscures what's going on. We have no idea what's going on inside, but it's graphic facilitation, and you're supposed to know what that is. And it's this magical thing. See how shiny it is? It's so lovely and sparkly, and you want it. And oh, by the way, you're going to pay a lot of money for it. So this is the quandary, is that what's happening, these three things, the power of the work, the listening to, the shared understanding, and the seeing and touching, all those things are experiential. So how the heck do you take something from an experience and bottle it and talk about it? And no matter what, no matter how well you describe the work, your clients, if they've never worked with someone like us before, they're going to have to take a leap of faith. They're going to simply say, okay, I believe in this, there's something resonating here that's working for me, but it is a risk that they have to take. And so what I would encourage you to do is think about in what ways can you create a safety net for your client. And really, for me, the way I've seen that work is by my ability to describe my process. Because I can have my portfolio page of 17 years of work, but they haven't experienced those drawings. They don't understand where that came from. So how can you stop and talk about your process, talk about the way you work? I'm telling you, the #1 most valuable page on my website is my frequently asked questions page. Because clients come to my site and they'll see something, they'll get it on some level, but it's when they read through that frequently asked questions page and they understand my process that they go, okay, I still don't know what's going to happen, but I trust that Brandy knows what's going to happen. And so, again, the best way to get yourself in the room is to be able to describe your process. Yes, you need some product to show people, so that that proves that you've done this work before. But really, I think the main thing is saying, this is how I love to work. This is how we can work together. This is what's going to happen in the room. That really, it's a matter of the best way to model this work is to describe your process. So, and let's talk about clients. And this is a model that I recently learned on a project, and I think this is wonderful that when you work, you get to hear all sorts of great, I don't know what I did with my marker. Does somebody have a black big one nearby? I have one. I'm good. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, I do want to back up for 1 second and say that this is why people have podiums, I'm realizing. You can hide all these things, and if things go terribly wrong, you can just hide behind them. I just need to take a break, it'll be okay. All right, so one last thing I wanted to say about the marketing is this is what I do, take the Johnny Appleseed approach. So folks who may not be from the US and know this piece of our folklore, it's a man named Johnny Appleseed who planted gajillions of apple trees because wherever he went, he planted seeds. And so truly, every time somebody asks me what I do, I tell them. And when I'm doing this, I'm planting seeds. And you have no idea which ones are going to germinate and become a client. And I think one thing is we do weird work. And so somebody says, so what do you do? And you're like, all right, well, I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes answering this. And so you might just sort of, I do design, or, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of skim over it. Please take the challenge and describe what you do, because that is another seed you can plant. And also with the Johnny Appleseed approach, again, you don't know what percentage are going to germinate, but the more seeds you plant, the more likely they are to germinate. I think what happens with some folks is, I've talked to Stephanie as a potential client, and I've told her everything I need to know, and then I don't hear from her, and I'm like, but that seed, I planted that seed, and she should love me, and she should hire me. You have no idea if Stephanie has the right kind of project. You have no idea if you really gave her enough of a safety net to understand. So really, it's the idea of planting all these seeds, because again, some of them will germinate, some of them won't. So let's talk about the clients. So one thing that's really nice about doing this work is you get to see all sorts of different content from other folks, and you pick up all sorts of different tidbits. One thing I recently was in a project where they very elegantly talked about the fact that some customers are going to hire you based on cost, and some folks are going to hire you based on value. So these clients are the type of clients who they've seen it in an event, they knew something happened, they don't really get it, and the extent of their decision making is, get one of those people who does that drawing thing, right? And so you get the call maybe 2 weeks before the project, and we're like, we hear you're one of those people who does the drawing thing, so what do you cost? And that's about the extent of the conversation. You show up with your paper and your markers and you do the work. On the other hand, the clients who hire you on value are the ones who understand why the heck they want you in the room and what you can do. And really, these folks, the folks who are going to hire you on cost, they're always going to treat you like a commodity. The clients who hire you based on value are the ones who are going to treat you like a partner. And that's just the deal. I personally am actually okay with either type of client, because I know that I'm going to do great work at the board, whether either direction they're coming from. But I know that a lot of people really value those partnerships. They only want clients who are going to treat them like a partner. And that's fantastic. That's a matter of, over time, having the ability to sort of, look for the signals and go, oh, I see, this is one of the commodity clients, or oh, I see, this is a partner. And being willing to say no to the commodity clients, and say yes to the partners. But just know that those are two different things. You have a commodity-based thinker, it's going to be extremely difficult to convince them to hire you on value. And my philosophy is that's okay. Both of those things are out there, and you decide what kind of folks you want to work with. You are going to live in this territory for the next 3 days. I understand that this is very appealing to have colleagues to really focus on what the heck happens on the piece of paper. But really, again, like Lisa's saying, the challenge of how do you broaden and engage more than with those markers in your hand or the roll of tape. Time-wise, we're over now?
10.
Okay, are we finishing at 10? Yes? I have the world's best spatial sense. I have zero chronological sense whatsoever. I really do. Like, facilitators are always like, are we over time? I'm like, I have no idea. I really could care less. Now, very quickly, just to finish up, I need one person from each table to come up here. So one person come up and get your prizes. So if you bring this back to your table. No, they're not edible. They're shiny objects. It's so exciting. Excellent. Perfect. Oh, you've got them. Excellent. Is that all the tables have their prizes? This is your own little bottle of what the heck happens in the room. This will be fine for customs. They'll probably look at you funny, but it should be good. And again, I invite you to write on the label what your own powers are, what your unique qualities are, because we can, we each have the power to make this happen in the room and bring it out into the room. So thank you so much for your time. Again, I'm thrilled.